Hi everyone, it's me Puzzle, and the release of Stalker 2 is already in 5 days, and as we said, we're in for the darkest world yet, with a map of 64 square kilometers. In this video, I decided to refresh all the features awaiting us in the full version of the game. Over the development period, there were many stories about the A-Life 2-Life system in the zone, about hallucinations from fatigue, and about the map, which I dedicated an entire video to right here. Be sure to watch that one after this if you haven't seen it yet. I'm sure you won't regret it. Now let's begin and dive into the features of Stalker 2 that you might have forgotten about, and we'll start with a life simulation in this dark and dangerous zone. In a recent interview, GSC Game World's technical producer, Yevgeny Kulik, shared that the studio has significantly refined Unreal Engine 5 to adapt it to the needs of Stalker 2. The developers have modified the engine so extensively that they call it 5-in-1 GSC. One of the key changes was the introduction of the A-Life system, which provided unique AI capabilities even in the original Stalker games. In the new game, A-Life will also be present and will be an essential part of the gameplay. According to Kulik, A-Life 2 functions in the background, even when the player is not around. Constant events occur that can impact the game world, such as firefights between factions or mutant attacks on NPCs. Additionally, the developer noted that unlike previous games where players could escape enemies by loading a new map section, in Stalker 2, the world is open and seamless. Factions and monsters can chase the player across the entire map. Moreover, NPCs and monsters have their own natural territories that they will protect. The location and behavior of enemies depend on the faction or type of creature, and they can patrol or chase the player throughout the zone. Overall, this system provides constant movement and changes in the game world, where factions and monsters can move across the map, creating dynamic events even outside the player's view. In general, everything looks like it was in the original games, but with improvements. In addition, it became known that Stalker 2 will have a kill counter. A small detail, but nice. The game will also have unexpected emissions and even some hurricane-like phenomena. We saw this in several trailers. For example, a vortex chasing the hero looks absolutely insane, and the emissions literally change the color of the sky, and you must run to a bunker or some safe place. Such things are likely tied to story moments, but it would be cool to see random appearances of similar weather events. And most likely, they will be, because the developers mentioned that lightning during such emissions can kill an enemy or you if it hits you. Similar to what happened in bad weather in Red Dead Redemption, you won't be able to see all the content available in the game in one playthrough. The story will largely depend on the choices made and actions taken. Some characters and quests will be unavailable in one version of the story, but will open in another if the player decides to replay the game and make different choices in key moments. The player must closely monitor the main character's condition. He has a need for rest, sleep, and food, and if there are issues with any of these, it will affect combat effectiveness. During battles, enemies behave realistically and determine the character's location only if they can actually see him. If the hero manages to hide from view, the enemies start making guesses about where he might be at that moment, and based on these assumptions, they begin searching for the character in the area. Heart of Chornobyl will be a blend of old and new. While this is a standalone sequel set in a modern world, it is building atop the foundations of the original game, so expect to see some familiar faces and factions, although given the pervasive danger of the zone, it's hard to say who has survived over the years. The same can be said of the mutants, many of which may be ostensibly recognizable but ultimately warped beyond recognition due to extended exposure to the zone's litany of mysterious anomalies and radioactive areas. Speaking of anomalies, they're as deadly as ever. Some can be spotted easily. Flaming pillars and spontaneous whirlwinds are dead giveaways, but others barely register as a shimmer in the air, meaning you need to be careful if your Geiger counter crackles into life. You can throw nuts and bolts ahead of you to detect exactly where an anomaly is. In the game, according to the developers, there are 35 types of weapons. At the same time, each gun can be significantly modified with various upgrades and attachments, such as scopes and other devices. Not all anomalies in the zone will be dangerous for the player. For example, the cushion allows the player to land without taking damage after falling from a great height. As the shooter's creators say, factions represented in Heart of Chornobyl can experience a leadership change without the hero's interference, which could shift their ideology. In some cases, such changes could cause a faction to split into two opposing groups. The developers did not aim to make the game easy. According to them, elements like a low penalty for mistakes and automatic health regeneration don't fit and do not align with the experience the studio wanted to create for players. The game will not have a leveling system in the usual sense. The developers expect players to improve their skills alongside the main character, learning more about the shooter's world, figuring out how to survive in the zone, navigating anomalies, gradually sharpening reflexes, and eventually shooting more accurately. According to its official website and Steam store page, the game will receive a multiplayer update after launch. It's currently unclear what type of multiplayer mode would be included in this free update, but a PC Gamer deep dive on the game back in December 2021 teased that PvP would be added post-launch. It's also been confirmed that Stalker 2 will receive mod support on both PC and consoles. Of course, the immersion goes beyond just the visuals. You encounter plenty of threats, human and mutant, but there are plenty of quiet moments, which can also be just as terrifying if there's an unknown anomaly in the area. It's also possible to just hang out and speak to random stalkers. The developer told Windows Central, "You can spend hours talking to random stalkers, talking about random topics with them, not narrative-driven topics. They will tell you about the zone and their lives. You can also sit around the campfire and listen to stories or hear music from other NPCs, just as the trailers have showcased thus far, interact with the black market for supplies, and much more." As with previous titles, survival is a core element of the experience. You must manage your hunger, rest to ward off fatigue, repair gear, and even deal with lower quality guns jamming when least expected. Radiation is also a major threat, continuously depleting your health if you're poisoned, so keep a Geiger counter handy, keep an eye out for potential artifacts or gear that can help shield against it, and stay out of the water. For all this talk of a massive handcrafted world with so many things to discover, what about those in it for the main story? Well, good news, because it's about 40 hours long. Not quite the standard for open world shooters, especially since side quests and other content haven't been factored in, but it's equally absurd next to previous titles. And if you are keen on discovering everything, it'll take over 100 hours. If you're a long-time S.T.A.L.K.E.R fan, you may have experienced mods like Anomaly, Call of the Zone, Lost Alpha, and much more. The potential for similar experiences in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 is enticing. However, Xbox players can also access mods. It's yet to fully detail everything the kit offers beyond allowing players to create mods and total conversions, so chalk that up as another thing to look forward to post-launch. And yes, these are all the details and features known so far, but I think we can learn the rest ourselves just by getting the game, and let me remind you that Stalker is a long-developed game with a complicated history, but the same was true for the first part, and it became a cult hit. I really hope the same will happen with the second part. Well, that's all for today. If you haven't seen the video where we discuss the map size, be sure to watch it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. This has been Puzzle, and I'll see you in the next video.